So let me just move into this one with a little overview of the challenge itself. If you have any questions when I get to the later part of the presentation, which is more on the application process and the templates which you had received earlier, then please just let us know. We can take questions at the end, either verbally or if you would like to write them in the chat box, my ADPC colleagues would flag those to me. Thank you. So going to this overview of the challenge, we can just revisit that the overall goal of the challenge, which you can take into account when further developing your proposals, would be identifying, curating, nurturing, and promoting innovations derived from the local actors in APP countries for addressing disaster-related challenges. So you have all received a bit more guidance on what we mean by this, and we felt that your EOI applications matched with this goal of the challenge, which is why you have successfully been selected for this stage of the challenge. And obviously the themes of the challenge were in line with what you had also submitted. So these were around the themes of risk communication, early warning, and emergency response. Moving on, I can just give a bit of an overview as to where we are currently in this point of the challenge. So obviously we're here at this co-creation phase now, but obviously previously the EOIs had been submitted and evaluation of EOIs had taken place. So from the pool of EOI applications, we had selected these 10 applicant organizations to compete in this co-creation phase. So in the following slide, I will give more of a breakdown of the actual co-creation phase process. Following this co-creation phase would be selection of 6 winners. So those who would actually receive the award grant funding from ADPC. And those 6 winners would be engaged in more of a nurturing and development phase for the solutions. And even beyond this overall timeline of the challenge, which is May of this year to March of next year, we would continue to work with those 6 winners on the post-award support. So this is more like documentation, showcasing and promotion of the solutions, and of course, continuously improving and developing the ideas. And as had been indicated to everyone earlier, the nature of this challenge is both on the financial and non-financial support to fine-tune solutions, scale up, and wider application, which is all part of the innovation nurturing process. And again, we would just like to emphasize that we would be selecting 6 winners from this pool of 10, and the maximum award funding from ADPC would be $20,000 US. The actual amount would be awarded and determined based on the submitted proposal and budget to be agreed with ADPC, but maximum ceiling would be this amount of 20,000 USD. Just moving on then, this is more on the overall process and timeline for the co-creation phase. So as you will see, you had already been shared the proposal templates just towards the end of last month, 29th of July. And we are here in this orientation meeting. And based on the guidance that you will have received from this meeting today, we would expect you all to continue to develop and refine the solutions with the mentoring support if you have opted for that facility. And after that, we would be expecting the submission of the technical proposals. So the deadline for those is the 15th of September. We will be informing everyone about the Innovation Conclave, which would take place at the end of September. So we will confirm the date with you all, and main purpose of that Innovation Conclave, once we have received the proposals already, would be at that actual event for some pitching of the proposed solutions. So effectively the evaluation of the proposals would be based primarily on this submitted proposals and the budgets, as well as the pitch which is delivered during that innovation conclave. So we'll be providing you with all of the necessary details for that innovation conclave within the next few weeks. After that, the last step of this co-creation phase would basically be announcement of 6 winners to receive the award grant funding and progression to the next phase, which is nurturing and development phase. So we anticipate that this would be within roughly 15 days of the innovation conclave. So still within September, or could be within early October that announcement would be made. So this is just to give everyone an overview of the process and timeline for the co-creation phase. And not to dwell on these points too much, I think everyone is familiar, since in the EOI application phase, the preference and highlight was given to those EOI applications which demonstrated consistency with different principles of the challenge, namely those which demonstrate commitment to localization, ease of replication or adaptation to other contexts, cost efficiency, gender sensitivity, sustainability, social inclusiveness, and those innovators or innovations which place a focus on gender aspects, namely a focus on women innovators, were particularly encouraged. However, beyond these, in today's meeting, we really tried to emphasize the fact that proposals should also demonstrate what the social aspects or social impacts are, which are related to the solutions. So we will have seen that a lot of the solutions may be technology based in nature, but the proposals that you submit should really try to emphasize on the fact that there would be behavioral change or how these contribute to social impact among the end users. So that's just to highlight that point again for you all. And here, getting to some of the more logistical information, this is moving into the actual briefing and guidance on the submission of proposals. So you will all have been furnished with 2 proposal application templates. So the overall application should be comprised of these 2 forms. Form A being more on the proposal narrative, and the Form B would be on a detailed budget sheet, which these 2 forms should correspond with one another, and the information in each should align with one another. Deadline, as has been reiterated a few times, is the 15th of September, and you will have all been coordinating through the app@adpc.net email so far, and we would like you to use that same email address for your submission of the proposals. These other instructions are noted in the actual template, but just to highlight here, the email when you submit the proposal should state the name and organization of the applicant clearly so that we know who it's coming from. And if you could attach the completed forms and any other support documents which may be external to those 2 forms in a zipped file, just for our ease of reference. Moving on then into the specifics of the proposal narrative for award grant funding, that is the Form A. I would be able to run through various sections of this form. So what I would suggest, if you have had a chance to look at this form in advance of the meeting and you have any specific questions, I will run through every section of the form. And at the end, if someone wants to flag a particular question on a particular section of the form, I can move back to that part of the presentation. So I think if that works suitably for everyone, that's how I will proceed. There's obviously sections A through to section G of the form, covering aspects of applicant background information, grant concept information, budget narrative, monitoring plan, risks and mitigation, additional annexes to be attached to the application, and finally a declaration and signing page. So let me proceed into a more detailed overview of these sections of the form. Form A, proposal narrative for award grant funding. So the first page of the form, I guess it's fairly straightforward and hopefully self-explanatory in that sense, in that we would like information about the applicant and organization. So if we could get the detail of the organization legal name, so likely this would be the name of the organization that would be included on any potential agreement with ADPC for the award grant funding. However, if the organization is known by a different name for doing business or day-to-day, then you can also include that in the form here. Country of registration, it should be work from one of the 6 APP countries. So we would like to stress that point, that when you note this country of registration for the organization, it should be from one of the 6 eligible APP countries. Then please also just add details of the primary contact person and alternative contact in this section of the form. Moving on then, this would be still under the section A of the form. In the EOI phase, you had already summarized some information about organization, but please include that information in this form too, and also give specific reference to how the organization has the necessary capacity to deliver the solution that would be, and the project that you are outlining in this application. And I will just note it here, but throughout the form, there are various word counts. So please do not exceed these for each respective section of the form, just so that the applications would be well summarized and succinct in nature. Next, under the section A would be a chance to list out the team composition. So this is team members and their designation, and a brief description of the role that they would play in the project or innovation development. Furthermore, for those organizations who have opted to avail for this mentorship support, we would ask you just to summarize how the selected mentor would be adding value to your application and what role they are playing. But you will see this is distinct from the team. So actually, no need to put the mentor in this section. They are not part of your core team as such, but rather you put the information about them here in this section. Then section B really is one of the core parts of this application. So this is where we would expect most detail to come. We would ask you to give a title of the proposed innovation, solution, or the initiative here. And this section on the narrative should not exceed 3,000 words in length. So we ask you to adhere to that one. But obviously we have asked for a number of different sections here. So A would be defining the issue or problem that the project will be addressing with some background. B would be more on the objectives of the solution and how the project will help meet those objectives. C, some information about what makes this solution innovative or novel. So it would be really useful to know how your solution might differentiate from other solutions which are out there, both in the country and the region. D is what is the relevance of the solution to localization and DRM? So I think you have all demonstrated these in the EOI application phase. But in addition to that, we would really like you to demonstrate what are the social aspects or social impact. So we hope that some of the information that you received in the sessions today will help on this part. And next, section E would be on the outputs of the project. So what would be the outputs to be produced or delivered? These can be listed out in another section of the form, but they can be summarized here also. Outcomes of the project next, and also information about how the end users or beneficiaries, so that's at-risk communities, would be engaged in the design and testing of the solution. So next section would be identify relevant stakeholders of the project and detailing at least one engagement activity that could be convened with these partners. So this might be consultations with government or communities who would be utilizing the solution and how you would engage with them. Also, we would like information about scalability of the proposed solution, how it would be deployed in ongoing and future contexts, or potentially in other geographical areas and regions to reach highest number of people who may benefit from the solution. And lastly, we would just like you to add some details about cost effectiveness of the solution. So based on the budget amount which you have proposed, how this can meet the level of impact which you are aiming for with this solution. So that should also correspond with information that you provide in the budget section later on. In addition to that narrative, we would ask you to summarize the project activities in a visual form. So this could be flow diagram, or diagram of the project overall, which just to correspond with the narrative part. Another section for this section B would be on sustainability and engagement plan. Again, there is a word limit for this section, but please include information about how the solution can be maintained or deployed in future context. Or if you are looking to have uptake of the solution by stakeholders or institutions, or commercialization of the solution, that information should be included in this particular section of the form. This is the next section on the grant concept information. So here we would ask you to indicate the total number of months of the project. We have the provision for support roughly for 6 months. That's October to March. So if you could plan around this time period, and you can indicate total number of months of your project here. And for next part, deliverable schedule, you may have listed out some of those in the previous section of the form. Then they can be listed out here, but indicate the start date and end date for specific deliverables. And actually this information here should align with the next section of the form, which I will move to now. That is an implementation plan and timeline. So the deliverables in the last section can be listed in this second column here, but they should also correspond with activity and how the activity would lead to a deliverable and what is the timeline for these specific tasks. You can also indicate who is the person responsible for overseeing the particular task. So this would be compiled to represent an overall implementation plan with timeline once these details are filled. Moving on then, this is section C. This is more on the budget narrative. So the first section of this form, we would ask you to give the information about the amount requested from ADPC, that's in US dollars, amount from any other sources, so that's co-funding or leverage funding, and what you anticipate the total budget cost would be from both sources. So in the next slide, let me just highlight this point on the left-hand side, again, that the maximum that ADPC would be providing under this initiative would be the 20,000 USD. But as you'll see in the budget sheet here, where we ask you to summarize the budget categories, you can add both aspects. So resources requested from ADPC and the total amount, as well as any other additional resources which would be leveraged within that project period. Again, also in US dollars, and total costs can be mentioned here. So here would be a narrative description of the co-funding or leveraged funds. So if you are anticipating that you would get additional funding beyond the resources provided by ADPC, you can add this information here and describe how those would be contributing to this solution. And we would ask you not to exceed 300 words in this particular section. Section D would be on a monitoring plan. So we would ask you to give suggestions for indicators with description, what the data sources would be for monitoring those indicators and the data collection plan and any specific targets which have been set, and also how you might disaggregate the data in those cases. This is the monitoring plan. So these would be proposed indicators, and these would need to be agreed later on with ADPC in case you are selected for the award grant funding. Another section E is on the anticipated risks and mitigation. So as we all know, there may be risks or challenges involved in carrying out activities. So here we would like you to do this kind of risk assessment as to what you think particular risks might be and ways to mitigate these risks. So you can list out at least 3 risks. You can add additional ones, but we would also ask you to identify the ways which you might go about mitigating those identified risks in this section. Section F is more on annexes. So any additional documents which you would like to attach, you can list them here and perhaps provide them as the additional document in a zipped file. But please do at least include CVs of the team members that had been listed in the earlier section of the form. Lastly would be a section G, that's again a declaration and signing page. So we would ask the head of the organization or lead applicant to sign on this, whoever is authorized in the case of each organization. So perhaps before I move to the detailed budget sheet, I can look into the questions which have arisen based on the presentation so far. So let me just see which ones have been sent across. One moment. Or if ADPC colleagues would like to flag any significant questions that had been sent into the chat box, that would also be useful.
Kilian, most of the questions have been answered by Shalini. I think if there's any other, perhaps somebody, if somebody wants to ask here, they can either ask verbally or else write further in the chat.
Sure. So I think if anyone has questions they would like to bring up verbally, we can see if we can address them now. Then we can open the floor for further questions, considering if the questions in the chat box may have already been addressed.
Kilian, there's another question on about whether the 6 winners are one from each country or not. Do you want to add a comment on that?
Yeah, I had just seen this question. So yeah, thank you for this one. Basically, there will not be a provision that it would have to be one winner from each country. This is still on a merit basis. So we would be evaluating all the 10 applications based on merit rather than any particular allocation from 6 countries. So hopefully that answered that particular question. Then I think if there's no further questions forthcoming either in the chat or verbally now, then I could move to the explanation of this Form B that's on the budget template, if that's okay with everyone.
Kilian, I just wanted to add regarding the questions, if there is anything later also after this meeting, if there is after your discussions with your team, if there is any question, you can write to us at the email that you already been communicating with the app@adpc.net.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good point, Shalini. So yeah, beyond this meeting, if you do have questions which arise afterwards, then yeah, we can kind of communicate with you through the same APP email address and get back to you on those. then let me just get into this Form B of the detailed budget template. In fact, I would like to make this one a little bigger just for ease of viewing this. So basically this Form B would correspond with the budget narrative section. So you will see there's a description here, but these cost categories had been defined in the Form A, and here would be more providing the actual values of the budget. So you will see here again, resources requested from ADPC and the leveraged resources, and you should come up with a total budget, including the co-funding or leveraged funds. And obviously these are along the budget cost lines of personnel, travel, equipment and materials, communication and stationery, and the specific activity costs. And obviously there's space allocated for activities here, but if additional lines for activity need to be added or removed, then that's also possible. Then just looking at the second part of this form, you will see obviously activity 4 and 5 if you need them, and here the total resources requested from APP or ADPC and total co-funding support, leverage funds, and then a grand total here. So obviously total resources requested from ADPC should not exceed this 20,000 USD, and the actual amount would finally be agreed between ADPC and the applicant. So yeah, these are the further details on the Form B, which is budget template. So I hope this one is also fairly self-explanatory, but if there are any specific questions on this one, you can again reach out to the APP team and we'll be happy to address those questions. So again, I can open it up for any questions which may come up now. Otherwise, we can move into the last session and last section of today's meeting. So in that case, yeah, I would obviously invite anyone to approach us with further questions once you have a chance to look into more details in these forms. I realize we've shared quite a lot of information today, and you would like time to consider into these forms. So please just do contact us regarding those. This is obviously we've had this question and answer session on these templates for the submission of proposals. So this really wraps up the meeting overall today. So we hope that the sessions that we had shared with you earlier have been informative and given you some food for thought as you prepare your applications. We would again say that APP are awaiting the submission of the technical proposals and budgets by the 15th of September, and they should be submitted to the same email address. Applicants will receive instructions and guidance for pitching of the solutions at the Innovation Conclave, which would still be conducted within September. And guidance for this one will be provided at least 1 week prior to the Innovation Conclave meeting, if not earlier. And we would just like to emphasize that any information that you pitch at the conclave, it should align with what is written in the proposal. So we would like the finished proposal, technical proposal, to be submitted by this date. And then based on the information which you have submitted, you would be giving a short pitch at the Innovation Conclave based upon that application. So yeah, we would just invite you all to stay in contact with the APP team over the next few weeks as you develop your proposals, and we hope that this was an informative session for you. So thank you all for attending today's meeting, and thank you very much for bearing with us as we manage the time for this meeting. But very nice to meet you all today and look forward to working with you further on this innovation work under APP. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all
Bye.
virtually.
Thank you. Thank you, Clean.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.